G'day sweaty legends and welcome back. You guessed it, we are here for reading number 1, chapter 1. So before I get into it, I just want to go through a couple of things. It's hot as hell here, so don't laugh at me for sweating. I don't have any makeup on, it's too hot for that shit. It just melts off your face anyway. So, and secondary is I just want to go through a content warning. For the series. So this isn't a light-hearted read. It's quite heavy and can be quite violent. So I just want to let you know before we get started, just a quick content warning. Please be aware of any triggers and limitations. This is a mafia/gang related world that we're diving into. There's no heroes or heroines, and oftentimes they're hungry, ruthless, and they do bad things to themselves and to others. Also, I haven't read anything. I'm not reading ahead. I am reading this step by step with you. So I am looking forward to going on an adventure together. So without further ado, let's crack in to this little ripper, and we'll start with chapter 1, Ryth. I really hope that's how you pronounce it, but if it's not, it's how I do. So here we go. Flames reached high into the night, consuming the room on the second floor of our house with a roar. The room that until moments ago had been mine. I blinked, trying to dislodge the tears, and shivered. "Is anyone in there?" an officer screamed as he raced towards our home, and others followed. But Mum didn't answer. She just stared blankly at what remained of our life as it went up in flames. I coughed and spluttered as I stumbled towards him as he ran to the open front door. I wanted to tell him it was useless. I wanted to tell him there was nothing inside to save. Nothing. Not anymore. Our things were already gone. Our cars, the TVs, even my laptop with all my assignments on it for school, all taken even before the first flick of flames had started. Taken by the feds for evidence. Evidence of what? I didn't know. I looked at the few clothes in my hand, clothes that were all I had left. I hadn't even grabbed my cell phone that was laying on the dresser charging. They were all I had time to grab. As I stumbled from the shower, threw on some jeans and a t-shirt, grabbed a handful of clothes and raced from the house. 2 shirts and a pair of ripped jeans were clutched in my hands, along with 1 pair of panties, but no bra. Tears welled in my eyes. What was I supposed to do with no bra? Movement drew my gaze to the street behind me. A black sedan with heavily tinted windows rolled past. The red and blue flashing lights from the official vehicles splashed against the gleaming paint. I'd seen cars like that. I knew who drove them. It was the Rossies. "Mum!" I stared as the black car cruised past, red brake lights flaring as it drove down our street. Her wide eyes shone with panic. She hadn't spoken to me, not a goddamn word, even when the cops had slapped cuffs on Dad and taken him away. What the hell happened? She flinched when I stepped closer and touched her arm. Did the Rossies do this? Her breath caught and her eyes closed. That was all the answer I needed. Jesus. I wrapped my arms around my body. First they'd come for him, now they'd taken our home, leaving us with nothing. Elle, a woman's voice came behind us. Red and blue lights flashed in the dark, illuminating Stacey Cromwell's face as she stumbled over the hedge, dividing our properties, and came closer. She was dressed in her 90, a satin wrap covering her modesty. A display for the emergency services, no doubt, as she held out to my mum a black plastic bag. "For your clothes, honey." "Go away." Mum stared at our home without turning as it burned to the ground. But Mrs. Cromwell didn't move. She just stared at my mum until she jerked her gaze towards our neighbour and screamed, "Get the fuck away from me." She flinched and stumbled backwards, throwing the garbage bag to the ground before fleeing as fast as she could. "You didn't need to do that," I said, as her cell lit up with a message. The first responder who had run into our house now coughed and spluttered as he came to the door. The piercing wail of sirens filled the air as 2 more fire trucks pulled up to our home. But the officer just pulled his mask free and shook his head, meeting my mum's gaze. There's nothing. Nothing we can do. It's all gone. It's all... Boom. Something inside the house exploded. I flung myself backwards, dropping my clothes and grabbing my mum, dragging her with me as the second floor of our house collapsed. But Mum didn't even flinch. She just looked at her cell as it lit up with another message. What is it? I picked up the plastic bag and shoved our clothes inside. God, please don't let it be Dad. We have to leave, she announced. Leave to where? I straightened and motioned to our burning house as it spewed thick smoke. We have nowhere to go. Headlights splashed against the living room window as it shattered. I glanced behind us to a taxi as it pulled up in our drive and stared as my mum walked towards it. Mum, what the hell is going on? I followed her, thick tears sliding down my cheeks. Just get in the taxi, Ryth. Mum yanked open the door and climbed in. I caught the reflection in the back window of the taxi, my still damp hair, my t-shirt sticking to my skin. I reached up, touching the mark on my cheek as I shivered. I'd been in the middle of a shower after straightening up the destruction the feds had left behind when Mum tore into the bathroom screaming the place was on fire. It's him, she screamed as I lunged from the shower and yanked on some clothes before stumbling down the stairs after her. He knows what your father's done. Crack! Something in our house collapsed, flinging embers into the sky. I stared at the reflection of the inferno in the taxi window before climbing in. It was gone. Everything. Tears filled my eyes, blurring the inside of the vehicle as I yanked the door closed behind me. We carried the stench with us, staining the already foul air. The driver rolled down his window before he shoved the car into gear and pulled out of our driveway. Where are we going? I glanced towards her. Somewhere safe, she muttered, staring out the window. Safe? The Rossi's dark sedan filled my head. Where's safe? We had nowhere to go. All of our friends were Dad's friends, and right now, they were dangerous. A word resounded as we left our world behind and headed towards the city. Dangerous. Are they going to hurt him? No, she answered quietly. They need him. They might need him, but that didn't mean they needed us. But that won't stop them from coming after us, will it? Silence. That was the answer I was afraid of. I leaned back against the seat. Jesus, Dad, what the hell have you done? The last 2 days were a blur. First the argument and the sound of one of my parents' all too frequent shouting matches before chaos, and then the feds. The ache in the back of my throat felt like a fist. I swallowed, watching the city lights brighten in the distance before we took the exit ramp and headed east towards a place where $1 million homes lined the streets and where rich kids raced expensive car for slips. We didn't know anyone there. 10-foot wrought iron fences and CCTV cameras were all I saw before the driver pulled into a driveway where the black gates were open. Thank you, Mum said as she handed him a $50 bill pulled from her purse I hadn't noticed until now. Mum, where are we? I murmured as she pulled back to the back seat. She didn't answer, just shoved open the door and climbed out. I followed, finding a 3-story house partially hidden from the street. A midnight Shelby Mustang sat outside, a dark blue Lambo next to it, leaving one other parking space empty. What kind of people had cars like that? I stopped walking. It's just for a few days, honey. Mum never once looked my way, just until I figured this out. A man stepped out of the door, tall and intense. His gaze was fixed on my mum. Elle, he strode towards her and pulled her into a hug. Jesus, I was so damn worried. He glanced my way and forced a smile. Thank God you're both okay. I'm sorry, Creed. Mum looked away discreetly, brushing the tears away. I had no one else to call. Sorry? He seemed confused. You don't need to be sorry, Elle. That's what friends are for. Come on, let's get you both inside. You're shaking like a damn leaf. He slid his arm around Mum's waist, pulling her toward the front door. But it was that empty car space that nagged me, enough to make me glance over my shoulder before I followed. Footsteps thudded upstairs before a door closed with a bang. I flinched and jerked my gaze upwards. "Don't worry," Creed said, as he met my gaze. "You won't hear a damn thing inside. Double glazed windows." Like everyone else, his gaze drifted to the mark on my cheek. The ugly, disgusting strawberry disfiguration. I hated it. Heat flared as I tugged my hair across to hide it. "It's just for the night," Mum assured. "Just so I can think." "For as long as you need a place to stay, this is yours," he replied. "Come on, I bet you're exhausted." I carried the plastic bag of clothes inside, acutely aware as I stepped into a stranger's house in nothing more than a damp t-shirt and dirty jeans. "Let me get you settled," he called to me and headed for the stairs. "Then your mum and I can have a drink and try to figure out a way out of this." "How did you know my dad?" I asked as I followed. His steps faltered for a second and he glanced over his shoulder. "Your dad? I don't, not really." He glanced towards Mum. "Your mum and I knew each other in college." I looked back as I climbed the stairs. She looked so lost in that moment, so utterly lost. I followed him up to the 3rd floor and stepped forward, listening to the drone of a TV coming from a room further along the hall. "You have a son?" "Sons," he answered with a smile. "3 of the pains in the arse, unfortunately. But don't worry, 2 will be gone before long," he said as he moved ahead of me. God knows my damn wallet could use a break. They eat like horses. He opened a bedroom door and flicked on the light. "The room's a bit cluttered, I'm sorry. We mostly use it as a storage room, but there's clean sheets on the bed." At first glance, he looked younger in the outside lights, but standing here in the brighter glare, I caught the flecks of grey amongst the black. He held my gaze, and in the connection, goosebumps raced along my arms. "I hope you like it here," he murmured as I stepped into the room. Automatically whispered thank you and closed the door behind me. The heavy thud of his steps echoed as he left. "Like it here?" I scowled. "For the night, sure." By morning, we'd have a plan. Mum and me and our lawyers to figure out a way to get my dad free. The faint sound of an engine drew my focus to the window. I rounded the bed, squeezed between some kind of machine covered with a sheet, and looked out the window as a black Jeep Cherokee drove down through the open gate and pulled into the empty car parking spot. "Sons," the word resounded. "Older sons? Older than me, at least." I leaned closer to the glass, trying to get a glimpse as he climbed out of the 4-wheel drive and closed the door. But he was hidden, leaving me to stare at his shadow before even that disappeared. Downstairs, the front door closed with a thud. I glanced towards the doorway, then I moved around the machine, stubbing my toe as I went. "Shit!" I cried, shoving the damn thing. The sheet slipped, revealing a stainless steel machine, a breathing machine. I'd seen these things. Respirators, that's right. High five to my constant reruns of Grey's Anatomy, I muttered. But why was it here? I tugged at the covering, revealing more and more of the room crammed with medical equipment. New equipment at that. There was an ID sticker on one of the machines. Unable to help myself, I peered closer. Naomi Banks. I glanced at the doorway and moved around the bed, finding a pile of bereavement cards stacked in a pile and shoved underneath a stack of paperwork. A flare of sadness moved through me as I bent and pulled them free. I knew I shouldn't be looking at something so personal. I wasn't that kind of person, not one who invaded. But I was unable to help myself as I opened the first card and started reading. Creed. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Naomi was a breathtaking woman, alive and vibrant, especially when she spoke about you and the boys. The world will be a sadder place without her. Call me if you need anything at all. Allah Goldsmith." "Allah Goldsmith," I whispered. "I know that name." Then it hit me. Senator Allah Goldsmith had been all over the news and social media, pimping his new campaign for the next electoral term, triggering a whole new wave of name-mocking as he stood out Popeyes and scarfed down a piece of chicken like he was just one of the community. Allah the Beluga. The chants filled my head. It was a name no one would forget in a hurry. A senator? I opened the next card and kept reading. There was one from Sting. Yeah, that Sting. "Holy shit," I mumbled and glanced at the doorway again. This guy's kind of a big deal. But they were all the same. All cards from very influential people dated a month ago and all saying the same things about his wife, how his wife was loved and how much she'd be missed. And here I was being bitchy to the guy for helping us. Nice one, Ree, I muttered and leaned back against the end of the bed. The heavy thud of footsteps stopped at the landing. My pulse pounded harder, sending a pang across my chest until the resounding steps started once more. Only this time they came closer. I shoved the cards back together, gathered them into a pile and pushed them back where they'd been hidden. I didn't need to be a genius to put two and two together. This wasn't just a bedroom, or a storeroom for that matter, no matter how much Creedbanks wanted it to be. This room was purgatory of grief. The last memories of his wife. I glanced at the doorway. And a mother. And that is it for chapter 1. Nice quick one. So, obviously we'll get into a little bit more next chapter. But until next time, smutty reading. Love, love.